Hey everyone, welcome back to Hanging with Heather. I'm Heather, and tonight I want to talk about a video I watched this week by a renowned Canadian lawyer. His name is Rocco Galati, and an American. Her name is Catherine Austin Fitz, and I'd never heard of Catherine before, and I do know who Rocco Galati is. He's been known for some high profile cases. Anyways, they made a video 2 weeks ago. It was a conversation between two of them for 2 hours. I've linked it in the description below. You guys can go check it out. I found it very fascinating. It was about money and finance, which I'm very passionate about, and it had to do with everything that's happening around the coronavirus and the new economy and all these different ideas, which can make some people, question, what financial decisions that you should be making. And at the end of their 2-hour conversation, Catherine had started giving tips. So she had said there were 10 tips, but in total I only got around 4 of them. And I wanted to go over them with you and just see what people think of them and actually tell you what I personally have been put in place. So first I just want to tell you, so if you've never been on my channel before, basically this is just an experiment for me because I have executive function disorder and attention issues and speech problems, slow speech processing, and this whole channel is just to help me overcome some of those issues. So if you find that I am slow or boring or unintentionally saying the wrong thing, this is why. But let me get into it. So the first thing that she suggests was lower your expenses and increase your resiliency. So expenses, just, look at your budget, look at all the things coming out, and what are the biggest things? Is it debt? Is it your mortgage? Is it your vehicle? What expenses do you have coming out of your budget that you can reduce or eliminate? And my husband and I, we've already done this, so we don't have a mortgage anymore. We own our house free and clear. Obviously, we have to pay property taxes every year, but we own our house here in the countryside. We have no car payments. We just have to pay for the gas and the insurance and our licensing and everything like that. What else? Expenses. One thing that I'm looking more at that we haven't done is energy needs. So we have a stove, a dishwasher, washing machines, lights, electricity, and now that I've eliminated those expenses, I'm looking at reducing our electrical expenses as well as food expenses. So here in Canada, we deal with food inflation. Every winter, you'll know that our food prices go up quite a lot. And this is something that impacts pretty much all Canadians equally. So for food, I already have seeds ready to plant. We live in the countryside, so that's not a problem planting outside. It's the weather mostly. We don't have a greenhouse yet, but those can be constructed with simple materials. However, just a word of warning, like last summer, there was a shortage of wood. So I don't know if any of you know of Goodyear. So Goodyear is a mill here in Quebec, and they had prematurely shut down during the first lockdown, thinking that there would be some kind of reduced demand for wood, and there ended up being a increased demand for wood and material, and there was a shortage, and then they had to reopen their mills and operate at 180% capacity. And my friends who are contractors and did the contracting course with me, so yes, I did my CCQ licensing here in Quebec, but they had incredible challenges trying to find lumber last summer, and the price increase of lumber went up exponentially, went from around like $3 for a 2x4 to $10 by 2x4. It came back down for a little while to around $5 or $6, but now it's back up again to $8 or $10. And I just actually had a conversation with some of these guys recently, and some of them, their new protocol is the client has to procure the material, and when they've got the material, then they'll go do the job. They don't want to waste their time driving from place to place to place trying to find material, and they're all sold out. We're actually facing that problem right now in plumbing. It's getting difficult to keep track of prices, particularly when you purchase something or you make a quote and you go to purchase the item and it's gone up by like threefold. So that's building a greenhouse. So yeah, just be careful with that. Make sure you've got your materials before, and it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. Electricity. I'm actually researching oil lamps now, and I don't particularly like LED. The one problem I faced with like LED lights is that oftentimes you can't change the bulb. So the ones that you buy at IKEA or places like that, sometimes the LED strip is built into the product, and then once it burns out or it's done its amount of time that it's producing electricity, it's done. You have to throw out the whole lamp. So oil lamps, olive oil lamps, candles, those kind of things. For electricity, I've looked at windmills, the batteries, and what's the thing called? I don't remember. It's a transistor, is it? I don't remember. Anyways, these are all like resiliency and lowering your expenses. I mean, obviously there's things that you will be obliged to pay to your municipality and government. So for example, here in Quebec, we have our municipal taxes, but for our vehicles, we have to pay an organization called the SAAQ, which permits us to drive our vehicles. What else? For that first point of lowering expenses and increasing resiliency. This reminded me of that former CIA agent, Mike Baker, who's been interviewed on Joe Rogan a few times, and he talked about the Russian but just like when they shut down the electrical grid system in India, I believe that's the case. And even if it's not related to a new economy and resiliency, it's also related to emergency preparedness. If, for example, like in Texas, experienced the wicked snowstorm, here in Quebec, we've experienced the ice storm of 1998, where you could potentially be out of services or electricity for 5 weeks, 6 weeks, a couple months. And if you don't have a second source of energy or heat, I've mentioned this before, you can't get water from your well, and you can't cook food, things like that. You can't preserve your food. Obviously this applies to the countryside. I have no idea. If you're in the city, you're most likely on city water and not on well water, so you're reliant on those municipal services. That's why I encourage people to move to the countryside. Come to the countryside. Your quality of life could improve quite a bit. All right, so her second point was liquidity. And it's some of it's the basics like cash, coins, precious metals. I have cash. The only ones I don't have are coins and precious metals, and I have looked into it before. Like in some cultures, they have gold jewelry, different precious metals, things like that. In Quebec, it's more likely to get stolen. Like if you have these things, you're more likely a target for thieves. But you know, a gold bar in a safe or coins like that, I might look into this. I think it's very interesting because those metals are always needed in fabrication of technology and things like that. All right. She, in her conversation with Rocco, actually mentioned jokingly she's collecting little whiskey bars because in case alcohol becomes a currency. But it's interesting, like, what makes you think, like, if cash became completely digital, what could you use as currency? Your services, a good, you know, it's just a really great thinking exercise, like here and now. If today, you know, let's say the electrical grid system went out and you had no internet and you couldn't access your debit card or credit card, what would you use to exchange? Obviously, if you had cash on you, some people might still accept the cash as a way of exchanging those goods. But if you didn't have cash, what does the other person need and want? So this is a good exercise for me. I haven't thought about it yet. I've used my chicken eggs. So we have chickens and I've given away chicken eggs to people before. You know, it's a gift. They enjoy it very much. The third point she had was along the lines of generating income. And investing in your own skills. So she talked about having a company and using that company to generate a portion of your income. And Rocco chimed in and mentioned, you know, passive income through rentals. And continually investing in your own skills that you can offer services to people through this company. And like as we've seen during the lockdowns is that a lot of small businesses were shut down and only people with you know, marketable skills could keep going. So let's say you had a restaurant and your income was reduced to takeout or, you know, takeaways. Could you market your skill in another way as like home catering or I don't know, meal prep, things like that? I'm just trying to think creatively. And then what else did she mention here? The fourth one she mentioned, she always, you know, there's always great companies to invest in. And she didn't want people to be afraid of investing in the stock market because there will always be good companies out there who are striving to do the right thing in spite of the economic situation. And people will always need services. You know, we're human beings. We always need soap. We always need food, you know, to survive. So there are companies that would be in dire straits if the financial markets collapsed, and they're always in need of financial liquidity. So she mentioned, she didn't give a list of companies, but there are companies out there that you can invest in and get potentially a dividend income from, or, you know, growth. So that's something that I do. Like, for the third point with a company, Dominic and I have a plumbing business. We're scaling it back now. We're no longer doing jobs in Montreal. We're going to stick to the countryside and our local economy. But that provides a portion of income. We don't have any passive income yet through rentals. We did have a rental at one point in Ottawa, but I found the commute to take care of it, and while living in rural Quebec, a bit challenging, particularly when you have a big family. So we sold that several years ago. However, we're looking into doing that again. But she made these other really, really interesting points about finding a community. So with everything that's going on in the world right now, there will be people that disagree with you and disagree how you see the world. And, it reminds me of Soviet times when people were ostracized, or, they had a mark on their back and no one would associate with you anymore. So it's very important to find a community of like-minded people or supportive people, like in the real world, not just on the internet. And here in my community that I live in, we know who's afraid of COVID and who's not afraid, and who, who's a crasseur, as we would say in French, or who is, in English you would say snitch. Snitches get stitches, but you know quickly who in your village is someone who would snitch or call the police. And you find that less so in the countryside, just because it'll come back to bite them. My neighbor said something really poignant. She had said, if your car breaks down, the government is not coming to help you fix your car and get you to work. Your neighbors will. Your neighbors are going to be the ones that give you a lift and help you out in those situations. And she's very right. In this day and age, when governments were telling people to call these hotlines to save, and something fishy was going on, it was occurring in suburban and urban areas, and you would hear about, like a party of this or a family gathering and so on and so forth. But that can come back to bite you, particularly when you're in need. And people don't think about this happening, that something bad could happen to them and they would be in need of assistance. But it does happen, and you do need to rely on people, and you do need to have a community. And it could be a religious community, if you're part of a faith group. So if you're Christian, your church, here in Quebec, there's a very strong Jewish community, and they take care of each other, which is very important. But yeah, like here in the countryside, we don't have very many religious services. Most of the churches are closed down, but we do know who are like-minded. And when there's a curfew and you have to get home quickly, which houses you can walk in front of, basically. Let's just put it that way. Let me see, what else did she say? Oh, yes. When people are afraid of the commercial banking system and the lending system. So she spoke about internal mortgages, and this is something that you can do here in Canada. So let's say you have children, and your children have mortgages with a bank, and they're paying a certain interest on it, and you're too afraid to invest into the market or whatever it might be. You can lend your children the money. Basically, it's like refinancing their mortgage, but it turns it into an annuity, and they're paying you that loan back with a specific interest rate or no interest rate. It depends on what contract you set up. But it's basically an internal lending system or a family lending. And I find that very interesting. My husband is from a big family, and, they do operate in that sense. I don't think it's as formal as those mortgages that she spoke about, but it does exist, and that's something that I would be interested in. But of course, with that, you would have to set up terms and conditions in a contract with your family member, because there is a high percentage that either it would ruin your relationship with the person, or you would never get the money back. But she gave a really nice story about her when she was in her own struggles, and her finances were completely cut off from her for a certain period of time, where family members who she had lent money to were paying her back, and that is what she used to live off of. I wanted to add to that family lending thing by mentioning family employment. So, also known as nepotism, but family employment, or being hired or, economically engaged by family members, is very important and is a good strategy to when work is scarce, or you need extra finances or whatnot, in a controlled economy where there's no more pension system, there's no more if it's a social credit system. So being hired by family members to do skill, like something that you're skilled in. So let's say it's plumbing, and you're a plumber. Well, you have very marketable skills, and you could do jobs for family and friends. For young women, it could be babysitting children. There's lots of skills and tasks that need to be done that are usually outsourced, but could remain within a family. And, this is challenging because most people come from very nuclear families, so very small families where these opportunities are less available. And I don't know what to say to that. I myself, I'm having my 6th child, and people today are choosing not to have children, and that's their own choice. And many people come from families where they live far away from their brothers and sisters, or they have very few brothers or none at all, and they have no one to rely on. So I think that their focus and their emphasis should probably be on building a community of individuals who wouldn't turn them in and would support them. But you would only know until tragedy hits. So I don't know what my advice to those individuals would be. I mean, if you can think of something, please comment below. Right. Or maybe you yourself are an individual without family, and you've had to rely on your friends or your religious community to pull you through hard times. In my case, my parents are deceased, and all of my brothers and sisters live on different continents. So I'm in North America, and I have a sibling in Europe, and I have another sibling in Oceania. So we're all over the place, and obviously with these suggestions it may not work over the international borders, but in my husband's family's case it would work, because there's 11 children. They have access to a farm, so instead of the father selling the farm off when he got too old, the children got together and created a cooperative, so they can each do projects on the farm within a partnership or business model. And so even if they individually could not afford the land, because farms are extremely expensive here in Canada, at least most farms are, land can be very expensive. So in our case, we were able to purchase 23,000 square feet for around $80,000 back in 2016, including the house, whereas just a few months ago, our neighbor's household is a little bit larger in land, but it was 350,000. Excuse me. And like the price increase is just astounding. But going back to the farm example, the cooperative, they haven't started some of their projects. However, there's lots of opportunity for resiliency through that, or economic opportunities through family. So I'm going to end it here. Go watch the conversation between Rocco and Catherine. It's very stimulating. They talk a lot about the history of money, and I would love to go read some of those books. Obviously, I'm limited for time because of my situation, but yeah, go watch it. It's very intellectually stimulating, and I'll see you guys next week. Take care. Bye-bye.